Global Transformation Astrology, GTA, with William Stickevers.
So these are all possibilities. How they'll all play out at what level of intensity is it's really uncertain, but we do know because we had an October 2nd annular Ring of Fire solar eclipse leading into this election, and we know it signifies a shift or fated turn of events that can have impact certainly up to 3 months before and 1 year later. Now, I certainly seen it impact for 3 months, not so much a year. That's pretty rare, but 3 months after eclipse, no doubt. So that sort of makes sense. You add 3 months from the time of the October 2nd eclipse. You have the Electoral College meeting, right? The Electoral College will meet in December and make a decision. Will those electors decide to vote for whoever won in that particular county or that particular state? The state electors. So that will be, a factor we have to look at after the election. So we know the mundane impact of eclipses are activation of hidden agendas, activation of unexpected developments that will shift the sentiment dramatically. We see it very much as unknown factors are all brought up. And one of the dramatic shifts in the narrative had to do with the fact that during the eclipse, we had Hurricane Helene, where the death toll, shot way past 200. I mean, I don't know what the total number is. I think it's in the thousands at this point. People who died during the hurricane and then after the hurricane. So this has been an enormous crisis. And what do we see? The response by FEMA was worse than any third world, less than third world, right? You talk to people in North Carolina, they're saying, no, wait a minute, right? Any third world military force could have done a better job than FEMA. And what was President Biden doing? Retargeting $640 million, right? The FEMA funds were basically getting exhausted while putting billions over to who? To Ukraine, to accelerate and intensify the war. And then we see Kamala Harris going into Georgia, which was also very hard hit. And then she makes an announcement to several hundred people in that neighborhood who lost homes, who are homeless, that relief is on the way with a $750 per household per victim, right? Here's the thing that's important about that. Those two particular states that Harris needed to win, she was going neck and neck with Trump. Those states, the polls reversed dramatically. So the Democratic game plan was to win Georgia, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. If you win those 3 states, you won the election. So she was very competitive, neck and neck in the polls, actually slightly ahead in some of the polls in Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. Then this hurricane comes along, and the federal response, her response, I mean, she couldn't have done anything more than what she stated, but it was the way she did it, right? That was promulgated all over the media. And then, of course, what Biden did blatantly, right? Because who's in charge of the White House? We don't know. Now, obviously, I think if Biden had his wits about him, he wouldn't have said what he said. He wouldn't have done what he did. And so we could see here that those 2 states are 2 states she is not going to win. She needed to win those states along with Pennsylvania to ensure the landslide victory that the mainstream media continues to tell you and will continue to tell you until Tuesday morning or even up till Tuesday night that she has inevitably going to win. So the other fact we have to look at here is not just the eclipse. We do know that since the solar eclipse, we saw where Trump started gaining ground in the presidential election. In other words, at the time of the eclipse, everything started shifting dramatically in Trump's favor. And this has to do with the fact that the U.S. Pluto return is occurring at the same time we're in the 3rd act of the American 4th turning. So this is America's 4th turning. We went through one during the Civil War, the lead up and into the Civil War. Then we had the second 4th turning event during the Great Depression, which then transitioned into World War II. So we had that 20-year period. And now we're in the 20-year period since 2008, and we're entering the 3rd act of that 4th turning. And we can see that this is going to really become more obvious now that Pluto is re-entering Aquarius in November, while the US is still undergoing the Pluto return. Now, you hear about Uranus return. Uranus would go all over the internet, right? Nick Dagan Best, all he talks about is Uranus return. There's no mention of the Pluto return. We're not done with the Pluto return, folks. The Uranus return does not come into formation until somewhere into the second half of 2025. So we're not going to really feel the Uranus return. We're in the Pluto return. We're going through the third act of the fourth turning. And so that's why these two overlapping cycles symbolize intense change, societal upheaval and mutation, and the potential for widespread upheaval at every level. That's not just in the population. That upheaval can be geopolitical upheaval, geo upheaval with the volcanoes and the earthquakes and the tsunamis. It represents upheaval at every level. So we have to keep that in mind, that what we're looking at here is what? The prospect of a political earthquake. That's right, a political earthquake. And during earthquakes, during these upheavals, the hidden issues, the latent conflicts, they all rise to the surface. So America is facing now and will continue to face structural, political, and economic crisis. Crisis means what? Time to decide. What's the biggest problem I see with my clients right now? They're not deciding. They're holding off on decisions. They're extending and pretending. They are delaying big time. Like, yeah, when you going to buy that Solana? Well, I'll get around to it. No, you don't understand. Like, now is the time. Everything you are putting off is what you need to make a decision about with a vengeance. Because, as we know, the longer you don't make a decision, the more outer events will accelerate and intensify to a point where you will not be able to ever pull that trigger, meaning you'll lose that opportunity, and we pay a very heavy, stiff price. So, any new administration, regardless who wins, is going to find itself at the center of both revolutionary opportunities and severe challenges simultaneously. And of course, we're in this eclipse zone between now and the time the Electoral College meets on December 19th, which is in the Constitution, by the way. And we do know this eclipse has also made an impact on the U.S. Declaration of Independence natal Saturn and squaring the natal Mercury-Pluto. So look at that, Mercury-Pluto opposition, and we see that eclipse setting up a T-square connection within the Mercury-Pluto oppositional alignment in the USA independence natal chart. So again, a reckoning of some type is coming, a tension, all right, between a nation's identity and the shadow elements all coming out.
To watch the full presentation and more like this on geopolitics, the economy, and world events from an archetypal and mundane astrological perspective, join the Global Transformation Astrology membership. Go to gta.williamstickevers.com. Become a GTA member today.